Thanks, everybody, for joining us for this Innovations and Conversations with Stephen Anderson and our special guest today, Jerry Blumengarten. Thank you to Promethean and ClassFlow for sponsoring us. And I just want to go ahead and jump right in. Those of you who've been watching know that I don't like to spend a lot of time doing a whole lot of fluff, so I like to spend as much time as we can with our guests. And we have a really great one today with Jerry Blumengarten. Jerry, who is a dear friend of mine. We've known each other through EdChat and things like that. Jerry, if you've been on Twitter any amount of time and you're an educator, you've seen him referenced, you've seen his pages, you've probably been on his site and gotten a great deal of learning out of it. I know that I have, and I'm happy to bring Jerry Blumengarten to everybody. So thank you, Jerry. Thanks for joining us this afternoon.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thank you. Always nice hanging out with you.
Yeah, this is great. So I just want to jump right in. So tell the world what they need to know about Jerry Blumengarten.
First of all, I'm hyper, which everyone knows, energetic, creative, and I'm a constant learner. I'm the father of 2 children, and I have 5 grandchildren that keep me really informed about what's going on in education because their ages 3, 6, 9, 10, and 14. I met my wife, very interesting, on a career education in Israel tour. She was living in Boston, I was in New York. She taught 3rd and 4th grade in Melrose, Massachusetts, and I was teaching in Brooklyn, New York. I wrote curriculum for my school district for an organization that connected businesses and schools in New York City, and I also wrote educational materials for the utility industry, as well as being a classroom teacher in the New York City school system for 20 years, and then the final 12 years I served as a teacher librarian. I'm proud to be a Twitterbrarian, and my PLN gives me great sites like right here, Steve Anderson, Web 2.0 Classroom. And I have to tell you something. Contrary to popular belief, I do not know everything.
I don't believe it. I don't believe it.
But I can turn to my mavens like Steve Anderson, Web 2.0 Classroom. In fact, after writing this curriculum and these booklets for the energy utility industry, I made a presentation how I did my writing, because it's the same thing that an actual student would do. I go through the same exact process. And I was going into schools and giving it, and someone in California said, Jerry, I wish you were here. And I couldn't, I don't sleep. And that night I said, wait a minute, there's got to be some way I can give this presentation online. Who do you ask? You ask your PLN. Who do I call up and Skype with? Shelley Terrell. Where is she? In Germany. She's in her pajamas. I explained what I did, and she said, Jerry, that's easy. You put it on a mixed book. I never heard of a mixed book before. And now I can give, and I've given presentations in Australia and Honduras and all over the country, thanks to Shelley. That's why it's important. I don't know everything, so I'll turn to, if I know anything about the flipped class, I'll turn to my good buddy Stacy Roshan, Buddy XO. Genius Hour, Joy Kerr. Leadership, Eric Scheninger and Todd Whitaker. Green Screen, I didn't know about Green Screen, Josh Stumpenhorst. Evernote, who do you call on Evernote? The nerdy teacher, Nick. Library, Joyce Valenza, Shannon Miller, Gwyneth Jones. Anything in global education, I think of my good buddy in Georgia, Vicki Davis, Cool Cat Teacher. Blogging, William Chamberlain. And the very prolific Tom Whitby. So meanwhile, I don't have to know everything, and that's the beauty of forming a great PLN. Okay?
I love it, and I think you're exactly right. So I want to talk about your pages in a few minutes, but one of the things that I love to hear from people, especially in education, is the path that they came to in education. I mean, what led you to be a teacher? What led you to go down that path of being an educator? So you were writing manuals. You were doing that with. Were you doing that before you became a classroom teacher, or did you happen upon that afterward? What was your path through it?
As a result of getting known and whatnot, and I started writing curriculum for this organization on career education, and she kind of the director started me on the writing and realizing the ability I did have so I can share my information, and it just took off from there. And I started writing for the school district, the New York City Board of Education at the time. Now it's the Department of Education. And then I got someone needed a creative person to do this writing for the utility industry, and I was chosen as a result of starting my own curriculum.
So what led you to be a teacher?
I still do not know what I want to do for my life. How's that? I think the biggest influence on me was my mother. My mother was a brilliant woman who graduated summa cum laude from college. Then she raised a family, went back to school, got her master's and almost her PhD. And she, whenever I asked her a question, she only give me a partial little answer. She wanted me to find the answer. So it really taught me to search and to be creative and to be a constant learner.
Yeah, moms are good like that. My mom was the same way. She was my encouragement. My mom's not an educator, but she encouraged me to do that. Now, one of the things that I found out that as long as I've known you, that I didn't know before, as I was preparing to do this, to do our chat, was I always thought when you were in New York City that you were always a librarian. I didn't know that you were a teacher. So, what was that transition like from moving to the classroom to moving into a librarian position? How did that shape who you are today?
You have to understand something. I really appreciate and understand the difficulties teachers have. I started as a day-to-day sub in the inner city. I started in an area that was known as the homicide capital of New York City. In a 5 square mile area, we had 125 murders a year in this one area. In fact, someone was shot dead right in front of our school at noontime one day. So this was the type of environment that I taught in. People don't understand that. I was a classroom teacher for 20 years. Now, in the schools I worked in, we had a very high rate of turnover of teachers because they couldn't take it and they left because we didn't have the supplies, we didn't have the support, and we didn't have good administration or anything like that. So it was very difficult just to teach there, aside from the violence of the area and whatnot. And I don't know, I think my experience from day-to-day subbing, from covering classes because we couldn't get teachers to come every day, and we teachers got extra money, it was called blood money, to cover the classes. I taught all subject areas. I was also a social studies teacher, and there were so many social studies teachers that I always had a split program. So I taught language arts one year, I taught science, I taught math, I taught bilingual reading. I had a swim assist, I had a music assist. So I did just about everything. So I had experiences in all the subject areas. So when the principal came to me after my 20th year and said, "Jerry, the librarian's retiring, but between us, he only worked the first 2 years." The library was a shambles. It was a complete mess. I moved every book twice. I removed a lot of the materials that were old, not used, and I created a great learning environment. And I think the fact that I was a classroom teacher really helped me become a good librarian because I knew the subject area, and I had a great relationship with the students. So I think that transition was easy for me.
What's your best memory from those times?
Best memory is when my first library squad gave me a plaque and thanked me for all the work I did to help them. And I'm so proud of those 6 students because they all went on to college. And here they are, kids from the inner city. And they appreciate what I did for them. I cared about them and whatnot. And they went on. I think that's my best memory.
So you clearly do a lot of work with connected educators, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But so looking at being a librarian media coordinator then to now, what do you think is the biggest change that has had to be made? I know that's a large kind of tackled question to take. What do you think? First of all,
people don't understand and don't appreciate the library media specialist or the teacher librarian. They have an awesome and a very, very difficult job. I had to do it all myself. They wouldn't give me an online system to catalog my books. So what did I do? I taught myself how to make a database. And I think that's crucial. That's what's missing in a lot of people. You have to be a learner yourself. Don't wait for professional development. You can learn, especially now, it's much easier than then. I taught myself how to do a spreadsheet. And those are the days you had to write the formulas. Teach yourself to do things. And I made a database for all the books in the library that I had at the time because they wouldn't let me do it. It was an onerous task, but I had some of those students help me with the database. So I taught them how to do their database.
Yeah, the role of the media coordinator, I think, is one that's underappreciated, definitely, like you say, is it's a great resource that everybody has in their buildings, but really sometimes only see that as the person who helps kids check out books when it's
Okay, but
way
what
way more
I
than
tell
that.
all the teacher librarians is keep doing what you're doing, but you have to become a tech-brarian in your laboratory. You should be leading professional development, technology, and whatnot, and knowing how to do these things. You get like a Shannon Miller, Gwyneth Jones. These are tremendous people, resource. They're not only teacher librarians, they are tech people. They're tech-brarians. And that's what you have to become. Because otherwise they're going to close your libraries. It's a bad thing.
So you're known as the Prince of Pages. That's what Tom Whitby calls it. Our friend Tom calls you the Prince of Pages. I'm sure a lot of people call you that. But how did I'm fascinated by how you got started with this whole cataloging. Why were you doing it? How did you do it? Why are you continuing to do it? What does it mean to you?
Okay, it all started with my son. He was a teenager at the time. We discovered angelfire.com. It was a free site. But I should back up. I started collecting sites myself. And I said, there's some great things I can share with other teachers and my colleagues and whatnot. And I found this site I could bookmark them. I put all my bookmarks. I was so proud. I had all my bookmarks up there. And guess what? The site crashed. I lost everything. So I was devastated. And then my son and I, as I said, we stumbled on Angel Fire. It was a completely free site at the time. And we decided to make a web page for our cat. So after doing that, I said, wait a minute, I should make a website. I just become the teacher librarian. I said, I should make a website for the school library, a one-stop educational shopping experience for the students in my school. I looked at other library sites, and they had all the science sites together. They had all the social studies, all the math. I said, no. When I find a site, let's say it's an algebra, I should have an algebra page. If I find a site in American Revolution, I have an American Revolution page. So that's how I started my pages. It actually, the blame is to Tony Amador. He was a science teacher. He came in the library one day and he's looking for books. And I found him in the science section. I say, hey, Tony, what do you need? He says, oh, Jerry, I'm doing a project on plate tectonics with my students. I said, Tony, next time you have a free period, come back to the library. After he left, I made a page. My first subject area page was Earth Science. I started collecting sites on that. And when he came back, I said, hey, Tony, tell you what. Here's your page for Earth Science and plate tectonics and whatnot, the links I've found so far. Why don't you come back and we'll do a cooperative learning unit in the library on Earth Science. So I set up stations and whatnot. We used computers, we used the atlases, we created actual plate. I know all about the Juan de Fuca plate. Do you? That's because he taught me about that in plate tectonics. But that's how I took off. That's how I started getting the pages. People need anything. I saw something that I wanted to learn. I made a page for it. And I'm still doing that. I didn't know how to do a voice thread. I made a voice thread. Then I made a page on it. Someone asked for vocal root today, so that's reminding me of that. I didn't know anything about live binders. I heard about them. So what did I do? I made a live binder for my wife's quilting because she had videos, she had PDFs, she had all kinds of stuff, and I put it all in one place for her. But that's what you do. These sites are free and whatnot. Learn how to use them by doing that.
So the question that everybody wants to know is, do you truly have a page for everything?
No, I do not. How could you have it? It's impossible.
Are you the new Google?
No, I'm not. I just tried to do the Google for Educators and to make once again, I appreciate all the hard work and the struggles that the frontline educators have today. I want to help them because when I started, people helped me in the dark ages. I had a group of teachers who helped me and made me who I am today, and I really appreciate that.
So what are you've clearly been curating information for a very long time. You have lots of good advice on curation. So what are some things you would tell people to remember as they're, especially educators and students, as they're curating? What would you tell them?
I think the important thing that we're not doing, and I hear this from my daughter constantly, she said, Dad, she's a college professor now, don't they teach students, she doesn't teach freshmen either, don't they teach them how to evaluate the information they find? Don't they teach them how to cite the information they find? What are they doing, Dad? I said, excuse me, I'm doing the best I can, teaching them how to research, how to evaluate. That's the start. Before you curate, make sure it's a a reliable source. Make sure it's true information, because anyone could put anything they want out there. And I think that's a start before you start curating a web. And there's so many great ways to curate. You can do it in Pinterest. You know, you can make boards of information, but you can do it in Digo. Excuse me, Web 2.0 Classroom. I have your public library along with a lot of other people's public libraries on that. And there's just so many ways. Librarian is a great story site. Well, I can go on and on.
That information literacy piece that you touched on about vetting your information, I think is huge. That's the piece that we are forgetting a lot of times. Is we're getting a lot of this great information because we're being bombarded with it all the time, and so we want to save it all, but then we're not truly really looking at it for its worth.
Once again, it's the old dad thing. We're not teaching students how to research properly. The information is there, but how do you find it? You know, there's a hidden web and whatnot. We're not even using those sources and whatnot. Most public libraries have great databases that are free to, all you need is a library card. A lot of high school librarians do that. You know, once again, Shanna Miller, Joyce Valenza, people like that have done this, have created these databases and whatnot and information.
So I have one last question for you before we wrap up, and that is, what is the best piece of advice you can offer to a new educator?
Well, I think the fact you should be firm, fair, consistent, and caring. And that's where Angela Myers is so right. You matter. Students know automatically if you really care and are concerned about them. So I think that's the message. Everyone matters. Not only that, not only your students, your staff, your parents, and everyone else in the community. Make sure you show them you appreciate them. Greet them with a smile. Greet them with a nice expression. We all should be working together as well.
I can't argue with anything you said. That if you are fair and compassionate, and I love Angela's message with "You matter," because every kid does matter and every voice does matter, and I think that's important.
I think that's the great thing of the chats. I think one way, and these other people give me these other thoughts. And you know something? They have good points. And that's the beauty of Twitter. We're bringing together people with different points of view. We're learning from each other. We're sharing. We're connecting.
Many voices, much learning, I like to say. Jerry, this is amazing. So it doesn't even feel like we've been talking for 20 minutes. You know, it's like talking. I love talking to you. You are amazing. I can't thank you enough for coming on with me with Innovations and Conversations. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And thank you to Promethean and ClassFlow. Don't forget to join us for our next Innovations and Conversations on October the 28th at 5 p.m. Eastern, where I'll be talking to the one and only Beth Still from Nebraska. Thanks, everybody, for watching. We'll see you next time.